About 2 years ago, I felt the Spirit of God ministering to me to start having physical sessions and meeting with groups of people in a particular place and just having discussions, answering questions, just talking for about an hour to 2 hours. And, you know, this leading was very strong. It was very clear. Undoubtedly, I knew it was God prompting me to start doing this thing and to just, take some time out of recording digital content to actually meeting with people and having this session of answering their personal questions. And the leading was for, people in their 20s or early 30s, just getting to meet with them and talk with them. And I was clear about this. And immediately I had this leading, my mind went to work and started imagining what it should be like. I started imagining the hall I would have to book, maybe in a hotel or somewhere like that, somewhere nice, a nice hall. I started imagining the chairs, the ambience of the place, and I told my wife about it, and she set off with that kind of imagination too, and we started looking out for places. But at that point in time, I really wasn't financially buoyant to do it that way. You understand? To have a regular, consistent sessions with people in a hotel or in a place where I could rent a hall. Because for those who know Abuja very well, Abuja is a very nice place. It's a very beautiful place. But then accommodation is very expensive. And when I'm talking about living accommodation and just renting a space. Very, very expensive. Real estate is crazy in Abuja. But then, so it made it very hard for me to just look at a place that was nice enough for me to to have this my sessions, which I felt the Spirit of God was leading me to have. So I was so frustrated, and I kept on looking for a place, and I wanted a place very central in the central part of Abuja where people could access easily, not somewhere in the suburbs. So I kept on looking, but then the prices, was scaring me off, and I just put it off. I just felt if God really wants me to do it, He will provide a place. So I just put it off, just saying God doesn't want me to do this. Maybe the time isn't right. But then it kept on niggling on my mind. And for a whole year, I didn't do it. But then I felt so uncomfortable. I felt like I was disobeying this prompting to do it. So it was just a lingering thing. And for me, that's one of the evidences of God talking to me. It's when it just lingers and it's just like a constant drip on your mind, and it just doesn't go away. No matter how much you try to distract yourself from it, it just doesn't go. So I had to endure this drip for a whole year. And then last year I got talking to my wife some more about it because this drip just kept on going on. And then I started trying to just look for a place maybe away from the central part of town. But then, you know, at the same time, it's like the more I was looking for a place that I could rent, the more my finances were just going against all that. And so it was like I can't even afford a place in the suburbs to be doing this thing. So logistically, it wasn't working, and I wanted to put it off. But early this year, it I had the Spirit of God minister to me again and just said, "Stop trying to do it the way you want to, and just do it the way you can." And that was very strong for me. That word was very strong for me. Stop trying to do it the way you want to, and just do it the way you can. And I looked at it, and I thought to myself, how can I do it? And so I had to be very introspective and honest with myself. What can I afford? I said, what I can afford is a place that I can use without payment. And I said, where is a place I can use without payment? And then I think from talking with my wife, she just reminded me of there's a park in Abuja here called Millennium Park. It's free to use for anything. It's a beautiful place. I said, why not use Millennium Park? It's central, it's free. But then I struggled. That's not how I imagined it in my mind. And then I was reminded again, don't do it how you want. Stop living in that world of how you want and do it in the way you can. So I said, okay, let's use Millennium Park. And I set out. Immediately, it was clear to me to use Millennium Park. I put it out there. And the first one I hosted was for my mentees in Abuja. And I just put it out there. And it was a beautiful experience. It was actually a great experience. I got to Millennium Park. I rented some mats, which I could do very easily. They were cheap enough. It was better than renting chairs and stuff like that. So I rented mats and we sat down on the grass. I could get water, which was very easy for me to afford. I got water and we sat down and we talked. And I met new people because some of my mentees invited people. And it was a great experience. It was an awesome experience. And I went home that day telling my wife, it was amazing. It was amazing. I actually felt I connected. It was beautiful. The scenery, the outdoor experience was just great. It was great. And we had a good talk. And then I had another one, like I think mid this year, I had another one where I met with a group of people, and there were even more people that showed up for this one this time, and it was even better than the first time. And it was really humbling to find out that it didn't have to be the way I wanted. When God called me to do it, He was telling me I was already prepared, but I had to look at what I had in my hands, not what I wanted to have. I had to look at what I could do, not what I wanted to do or what I was aspiring to do. And this is what I want to talk about today. Living in this world of what you want, as opposed to living in the world of what you can. Living in the world of what you want to do and how you want to do it, rather than in the world of what you can do. I talk to a lot of people and they tell me about dreams and aspirations that they have. And it brings a lot of frustration. And this is my biggest, when we have dreams, aspiration of what we want, they become an ambition. And ambitions are very tormenting things. Ambitions are very tormenting because we can see them, but we can't hold them yet. So it's very easy for you to live in this world of ambition and feel like a failure because there's something you desire that you do not have. There's a way you want to express that you can't. And so it's very, very, very easy for you to see yourself as defeated and as failing. That's the biggest problem I have with ambition. Ambitious people never feel successful, even when they are succeeding. They never see what they have, even when they have a lot. Because they don't live in the world of what they can do. They're always in the world of what they want to do. So even when they succeed at something, they're already looking at what they want to do in the future. So there's never rest. But I want to encourage us to live in the world of what you can do. I have a lot of people tell me, I want to start a podcast. And they're saying, I can't start because I want to do video and audio. But then I don't have a space to do video and audio, to do video. all the podcast spaces that they are renting out too expensive. They're telling me to pay 150,000 naira per session. I don't even earn that much. I earn 70K a month. How can I afford 150 naira per session? But then I want to start this podcast, and I want it to be video and audio, just like other people, big podcasts are doing it out there. You understand? For them, the standard of podcasting is that there must be a video. There must be a video. So then they hold up this thing, which they feel very strongly led to do in their soul, because it doesn't match the picture they have in their head. It doesn't match their ambition. So they don't do it. I'll let you know something about this podcast I'm doing, ProUp Masterclass. For a very long time, now I have a dedicated space in my house where I record the podcast. But for a very, very long time, I recorded the podcast in my car after dropping off my children at school, by the side of the road or right in front of my gate, in my car. Stuffy car, but then it worked as a studio for me. It wasn't ideal, but it was what I could do. And it's amazing how a lot of people used to ask me then, oh, what studio do you use? How do you? I tell them, no, I don't use a studio. I use my car. My car is my studio. I'm there in the car, locked up, AC off, and just sweating a lot of times, because that's what I could do. But then the podcast still went out to give people hope, to give people a sense of direction, to answer people's questions. I had to do it the way I could, not the way I wanted. I couldn't afford the way I wanted. But one thing I want you to know is that when God asks you to do something, by prompting it in your soul, because when we talk about this God asking to do, we always think it has to be something spectacular, God asking you, a light beaming down into your room from heaven and just telling you, oh, stand up and get to do that podcast. No, it's a prompting. God works from within us, a gentle, still voice within us, constantly telling us. That's how God tells me. I don't know how God will tell you. Maybe some of you do have that bright light experience, but then if it's God, it's evident. You cannot deny it. He talks to your soul. And sometimes it's just a desire to do something, an attraction to something. When he's asking you to do something, what he's telling you is that you're already prepared. God makes the provision before the assignment. So when God is asking you to do something, he's telling you you can do it. So whenever you feel led by God to do something and you are still in the wanting to, then you must retreat and think, God, how am I blowing this thing out of proportion? How am I letting my ego lead me rather than my spirit? How am I trying to overdress what you say I am already prepared for? So sometimes you must say, God, what do I have in my hands? As opposed to how I want to do it. Because God is telling you you're already prepared. God never prepares us at the point of the assignment. He prepares us way ahead of it. So when God was forming you and forming your lungs, it's not at the point where the lungs were fully formed that he developed air and oxygen that the lungs can breathe. He developed the air before the lungs. That's why man was the last thing he made. Everything was made ready for man to begin to live. So the need did not arise before the provision. The provision is always there before the need to do the assignment. So when God ministers to you to do something, he's telling you you can with what you have. Stop desiring. A lot of us is our ego and covetousness that makes us desire. puts us in a place where we want to do it in a particular way. Our insecurity, our willingness to please man instead of God, to show off. That's what got in my way from doing my physical sessions. That was what got in my way. It was do it in a way whereby people will say, wow, TA had this nice physical session in this grand hall and was such an amazing experience by human standards. But God wants what you have the way it is. Give God what you have and let Him turn it into what He wants. I'll say that again. Give God what you have and let Him turn it into what He wants. A lot of times we want what God has. We want God to give us what He has so we can have what we want. We want God to give us what He has the way we want. No, that's not how God works with us. We give Him what we have and He will turn it into what He wants. There's a part of the Bible that is a very popular story about Jesus feeding 5,000 and said there were a lot of people that had come to listen to Jesus and they were there for a number of days, and Jesus said they are not eating. And Jesus told the disciples to feed them. Then the disciples started to think of how they wanted to feed them. And they're like, if we were to go and use all our year's wages to feed them, they were already thinking of how they wanted to do it. And God said, what do you have? What do you have? And they gave him the little they had that seemed ridiculous, mediocre. And he took what they had and he turned it into what he wanted, which was sufficient. And that's what God is saying to someone out there today. Stop trying to do it the way you want. Stop living in this world of what I want and start basking in the world of what you can do. That is what you are abundant at. That's where your abundance lies. This thing about abundance has been totally distorted. We already have a fixed description of abundance. Mansion, houses, a lot of money in the bank, incredible cars. No, that's not what abundance is. That's somebody's abundance, but not everybody's abundant. Abundant is finding out what you can. Because what you can is always in large supply to you. So when I used that Millennium Park, I did it in an abundant way. Because everything around there I could afford abundantly. I could afford enough mats. I could afford enough water as refreshment. I could afford enough time to give to them. If I had used a hotel, I would have used it, but I've been out of a squeezing of maybe begging the hotel owner or the hall owner to allow me use 1 hour, and then they will be timing me. Maybe I'm not done in 1 hour, because the first session we had lasted a lot of hours, almost 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. If I'd used a hotel, I'd have been begging them. And they would tell me, Mr. Tola, you need to go now. You only paid for 1 hour. The chairs person, maybe I rented chairs, would have come and said, we need to start taking our chairs. In Nigeria, where there's power issues, the hotel will be telling me we need to switch off the generator right now. It might have been an embarrassment. But I had it in nature, where the sun was abundant. The weather was so good. The sun wasn't rushing me. The fresh air was better than the air conditioning. It was constant. It was refreshing. Everything went smoothly. Not the way I imagined, but the way God wanted, which ended up being better than the way I imagined. Stop living in the world of what you want to do. So many people torment themselves thinking about what they want to do. They say, I want to be able to go to orphanages every day with boxes of food and clothes and money and just give like 5 orphanages every week, every month. I want to be a philanthropist. But then they don't have enough to do it that way because God is calling them, they feel God is calling them to philanthropy, but they're like, I don't have enough to give to 5 orphanages every month and give 5 boxes of Indomie and 3 bags of clothes and 10 boxes of books and to build them a library and all that. We don't have that. I don't have that. Because they're staying in the world of what they want. And God is saying, I'm not sending you to do it like that. I'm sending you to that one orphan. That one that just needs 1 pack of biscuits and 1 pack of juice every week. That's how I want to do it. Not in that grand way that you think reveals me. It's in that small, gentle way. That's how I want to prove myself to you. We need to start living in that world of what we can do. Because you can abundantly afford a pack of biscuit, 1 pack of biscuit for that child, and a pack of juice for that child every week. You can do it abundantly. You can be generous in that. That's what God wants you to do, to operate on that level. And one thing you will realize is when you begin to obediently operate on the level of what you can do, you would realize that steadily what you can do would begin to improve into what you always wanted to do. And then you would stop being in that what I wanted to do world by stress. You will begin to do that thing you wanted to do. So the wanted to do of the past will become the can do of the future. That's how God works. So I really want to encourage someone today. Live in the world of what you can do. Start that podcast. Start that charity. Start that design studio, which is just your room. Start that photography business, which is just using your phone. Start with what you can. And let God turn it into what He wants. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi, and you've been listening to my podcast, ProUp Masterclass.